They say ordinary evenings are the ones that change you. I was folding a throw blanket in the soft lamplight when a familiar knock came, and a man I'd known since he was a boy sat down beside me with a look I'd never seen on him before. By the time the mantel clock struck 8, one question from him had lifted the floor from under my feet and set my heart beating like a second hand. You'll understand why when you hear what he asked me, and what I felt in that quiet, careful, unexpected moment. Before I start, tell me where you're watching from. Which city are you in tonight? I love seeing the map of your lives fill the comments. It was one of those slow evenings that make a house sound larger than it is. The wind brushed the eaves, and the old oak out front calmed its branches against the siding. I had a casserole cooling on the stove, the good plates drying on a towel, and the news murmuring low on the television like a neighbor you mostly agree with. My name is Jean. I'm 46, 2 years out from a marriage that ended the way some storms do. Loudly at first, and then with a long stretch of clearing skies. I've learned to enjoy my own quiet, to keep a soft blanket over the back of the couch and a jasmine candle on the coffee table, and to notice the way the light from the floor lamp falls across the rug in the evening, making a gold path from the hallway to the sliding door. I was alone, or I thought I was, right up until there was a polite knock, the sort you hear from someone raised to say, "Ma'am," even when he doesn't have to. When I opened the door, there was Randy, my neighbor's son, on the porch with his hands in the pockets of a canvas jacket. He's 29 now, tall in a way that makes doorways look smaller, with that open, steady face I've watched find its shape over the years. He'd grown out his hair a bit, and a few strands escaped the breeze to fall across his forehead. I remembered when he used to ride his bike in circles in my driveway, always braking just at the edge of the garage, grinning as if he carried a secret about how the world works. Now he stood with that same kindness, just finished. There's a difference between a boy's kindness and a man's. It feels deliberate. "Hey, Jean," he said, smiling. "Mom asked if I could bring this over. She baked too much again." He lifted a foil-covered pie tin as if presenting a medal. I took the pie, and the soft sweetness of cinnamon rose between us. "You two conspire to keep me fed," I said. "Come in for a minute. It's windy." He didn't step across the threshold without asking, "Is it okay if I do?" "That's why I opened the door," I said, and I meant it. I've learned to notice the small courtesies that keep a person safe. He toed off his boots by the mat, the way his mother taught him, and followed me into the living room. If you had walked in then, you would have seen a small, lived-in room with a couch that has forgiven more than a few coffee spills. 2 framed pictures of the coast, just enough blue to make the Midwest feel closer to water. A single lamp, warm in the corner. A little bowl of those wrapped butterscotch candies people of a certain generation keep as an informal welcome policy. He glanced at the bowl, and I laughed. "Go on," I said. "I know you're a butterscotch person." He didn't pretend otherwise. He unwrapped one carefully and folded the wrapper into a neat square, like a note. Then he glanced at the couch, at me at the quiet room, and asked, "May I sit?" "Please," I said, and settled on the far cushion. He chose a spot a respectful distance away, just close enough that I could see the scuff on his jacket sleeve and the clean line of a fresh shave. I clicked the television mute and left the world mouthing nonsense in the background. "How long are you in town?" I asked. "He'd been away for months. Construction work that keeps you chasing the season, weeks in Colorado, then Oklahoma, a picture from a diner in Kansas that made pancakes look like a religious experience." He told me about a crew chief who whistled all day, about a motel heater that clicked like a metronome, about long sunsets that stretched the color of copper wire across the sky. I listened. I've always liked the way other people's roads sound. He asked about my days. I told him about learning to cook for one, about how the house feels bigger on Fridays, about the library book club where nobody likes the same chapters, and somehow that makes us kinder to one another. I told him about replacing the porch light myself and standing back like I'd rebuilt a cathedral. He laughed softly, the kind that sits in his chest before it comes out. We talked like neighbors do, but there was something settled in him tonight that wasn't always there. A steadiness, a way he kept checking that I was comfortable. He noticed the throw blanket at my side and asked if I wanted the room warmer. He offered to carry the pie to the kitchen, then waited for my yes before he stood. Consent can be small like that. You feel it in the pauses people give you. When he sat again, the couch sighed under his weight, and the distance between us felt shorter, not because the space changed, but because the conversation did. He turned a little to face me, one knee toward me, one ankle tucked beneath. The lamplight softened the angle of his jaw and warmed the brown in his eyes. On the TV, a meteorologist gestured silently to a map that promised rain we'd already heard. It felt like the kind of quiet that asks a question. "Jean," he said, and he let my name rest there like he knew it was something that could be held and not just used. "Can I tell you something personal? And if you don't want to hear it, just say so." I could have told him no. I've said no to plenty of things lately. One more drink, a friend's plan to set me up, an invitation to a place I knew would feel like a memory. But there was nothing careless in his voice, nothing that made me want to pull my cardigan tighter or pretend I had something on the stove. I nodded. "You can tell me. If I don't want to answer, I won't. That okay?" "That's more than okay," he said. "Thank you." He looked down at his hands, turned his candy wrapper square over, and for a moment I could hear his mother's laugh from the other side of the fence and the slap of a screen door in summer. Then he looked back up at me, and it was just us again. Two adults in the warm circle of a lamp, the evening pressing its face against the windows. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," he said. "About timing. About how long it takes to see a thing clearly. I guess I thought I knew every house on this street, every person. But sometimes you come back and realize the picture you had wasn't all the way in focus." I smiled a little because it sounded like philosophy you learn while your coffee cools. "What came into focus?" He hesitated. "You," he said. The word was quiet and careful, as if it could break. "And I don't mean that in a way that makes trouble. I know who I am, and I know who you are, and I know what your life is and isn't. I see you. How you carry things. How you listen and don't rush. How you fix your own porch light, but still take a pie when it's offered. It's rare to watch someone choose grace." I didn't expect that. I thought he might ask to borrow a ladder. I thought he might need a ride early tomorrow to pick up his truck from the shop. I didn't expect to feel the floor reorganize itself under me, the way a room does when you move a chair you never loved, and suddenly the paths all make more sense. "Randy," I said, because it was my turn to say his name like it meant something. "That's a kind thing to say." "It's also true," he said. He glanced at the 2-space distance between us, then at me. "May I want to ask you a question. It's not a trap, and it's not a pressure. If it's too much, say the word and I'll take the pie back to my mother, and we'll pretend I just made you listen to the world's longest story about a motel heater." He was smiling, but I could see he meant it. What I respected, before I even knew the question, was that he was giving me the choice. "You can ask," I said, "and I can answer in the way that keeps both of us kind." He exhaled, relieved, then looked down and back up until we were level. "Would you be open," he said slowly, "to letting someone like me be good company to you now and then? In the simple ways. A walk at dusk, a coffee after errands, carrying the heavier grocery bags to your kitchen. And maybe, if you ever wanted it, and only if you wanted it, letting me hold your hand when the movie gets to the part that mistakes itself for real life." I heard the mantel clock click once in the pause after his words. It wasn't what I expected. The wind leaned its shoulder into the house, and the jasmine candle did that little dance flames do when they hear something true. The air between us changed shape, Not tighter, not looser. Just truer. He had not asked to take anything. He had asked to offer something, and he had done it as if I were a person whose no would be honored as fully as my yes. I realized my hands had folded themselves in my lap, fingers braided. I unwoofed them slowly, not as a signal to him, but as permission to myself to breathe in this moment without rushing it to an answer. I thought about the past year of evenings, about the way the grocery cart feels heavier when you come home to your own echo, about the pride of a porch light you replace yourself, and the tenderness of a neighbor who brings a pie because he remembers you like cinnamon. "Randy," I said again, and I let the syllables soften. "That is a generous question, and careful. Thank you for asking it that way." He didn't lean closer. He didn't crowd the air. He nodded, the way you nod when you've put something down on the table, and now you'll wait to see if it's welcome there. "You don't have to answer tonight," he said. "You don't have to answer at all. I wanted you to know the door I'm willing to hold open, not to push you through it." I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time, because the picture in my head, a younger man, a neighbor's son, doesn't usually come wrapped in this much care. The old stories don't account for how deliberately someone can offer respect. I looked at him fully then, the way you look at a painting you've passed 100 times and only just noticed the small boat in the corner. "Could I ask something back?" I said. He nodded immediately. "If I said yes to a walk, would you be willing to start with a small one? Around the block. A test of our pace, not a test of our destination." His eyes softened at the edges, and he smiled, bright as a porch light you can see from the street. "Yes," he said. "And if you said no, I'd wave to you from the sidewalk just the same." The room felt warmer. The news on the muted television cut to a commercial where two people pretended their coffee had made them fall in love. I almost wanted to unmute it and make us laugh at it together, as if to prove we weren't living inside anything cliché. But maybe clichés are just things that happen to enough people to become comforting. Maybe we're allowed to borrow a few. He glanced at the window. "It's still early," he said. "Would you like to step out to the porch for a minute and breathe the wind? If not, we can sit, and I can tell you about the diner in Kansas. They put whipped cream on the pancakes, as if some days need softening." "I'd like the porch," I said, but I hesitated, and he paused with me. "Before we move, one more question. May I take your arm when we step down? The porch step is slick from the leaves." He stood and offered his arm, but didn't come closer than I allowed. I slipped my hand around his forearm. It was a simple, steady line of contact, the kind that belongs to walks between people who are paying attention. We stood up together and turned toward the door. He waited while I blew out the candle. He held the door with his free hand and looked at me as if the night air were something he was borrowing from me. On the porch, the wind lifted the edge of my sweater and brought us the faintest smell of rain. The maple leaves had started to bronze, little shields catching the last light from the street lamp. We didn't talk for a few breaths. A car passed and skimmed a ribbon of sound along the curb. Next door, a screen door clicked, and someone laughed in a kitchen I could picture without looking. "Jane," he said softly, "when you're ready, I have a real question, the one that's been in my chest for a while. Not about walks or coffee or groceries." He turned just enough that I could see his face, earnest and unafraid of being tender. "It's the kind of question you deserve to have asked carefully." I held his gaze because running from gentleness has never saved anyone. "Ask it," I said. "Ask it in the way that keeps us both whole." He swallowed once and nodded. "Would it be welcome?" he said, each word measured. "If one day, not today, and only if the wanting is mutual. I told you what you mean to me beyond neighbor, and asked to show you slowly, with the kind of respect that lets every step be chosen." The air went very quiet. The wind seemed to listen. I didn't reach for an answer. I let the question sit like a worn bowl on a table between us, steam rising, safe to approach when the hands are ready. I felt something shift inside me, not a door swinging open, not a gate clanking shut. More like a window being unlocked, a soft click you hear only when the house is silent. He had not asked for my future. He had asked for a chance, someday, to honor whatever we might discover if we walked a little farther. I looked down at our arms, at the place where my hand circled his sleeve. Then I looked up at him, and I smiled in a way I hadn't in a long time, a way that belongs to a person who knows she can say yes or no and still be respected. The porch light glowed against the leaves, and the night kept its promise to hold our small bravery. I didn't speak right then. Some answers deserve the dignity of a pause. Instead, I squeezed his arm gently, permission to wait with me, and we stood there on the porch while the clock inside counted out the seconds we were learning to share. The porch light clicked off automatically after 10 minutes, and we both laughed a little at the sudden darkness before stepping back inside. It felt like the house welcomed us differently this time, less like a shelter for one person, and more like a space that could hold two without crowding. I closed the door gently, and when I turned back, Randy was standing there, his hands still tucked in his jacket pockets, as if unsure whether he should stay or give me the night to myself. "Don't go yet," I said, surprising myself with the ease of the words. His face softened. "I won't if you're sure." "I'm sure," I told him. We settled again on the couch, closer now. Not pressed together, but near enough that the warmth of him reached across the space. The television was still muted, frozen on a picture of a weather map, as if even the outside world had paused to see what might happen in this living room. I picked up the remote and turned it off. The room fell into a hushed quiet, broken only by the ticking clock and the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. It struck me then how rarely I'd sat like this, with company in silence that didn't need filling. Most of the time, silence had been a reminder of what was missing. Tonight, it felt like something else. Something alive. "I used to wonder," Randy said, leaning back into the cushions, "what it would feel like to talk with you like this. Not the quick conversations across the driveway, not the small talk about mail or the weather. Just sitting here, sharing the quiet." I tilted my head, studying him. "And now that you know." His smile was slow, deliberate. "It feels like I'll remember it." I looked away for a moment at the framed photo on my wall, a picture of the coast, waves breaking under a gray sky. My ex-husband and I had stood in that very spot years ago, smiling into a camera we handed to a stranger. At the time, I thought the photograph would anchor us, proof of where we'd been and what we'd meant. But over the years it became something else, a relic, a reminder of promises that had worn thin. Now, sitting with Randy, I saw the photo differently. Not as a grave marker for the past, but as a reminder that life is always moving, reshaping itself. The waves in that picture hadn't frozen the day after it was taken. They kept rolling, breaking, reforming, endlessly new. Maybe I could too. I turned back to him. "I didn't expect this tonight." I admitted, "You've made me think about things I thought I'd put away." "Is that a bad thing?" he asked carefully. "No," I said almost before he finished. "It's not bad. It's just vulnerable." He nodded, as if he understood more than I said aloud. I think vulnerability gets a bad name. People act like it's weakness, but sometimes it's the strongest thing you can do. Letting someone see where the cracks are and trusting they won't break you further. Those words sank into me. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear them until he said them. For years I'd kept my walls neat and high, thinking strength meant carrying everything alone. But maybe strength was also letting someone walk beside you, if only for a while. I shifted slightly, letting the blanket slip so that my hand rested openly on my knee. He noticed, of course, but he didn't rush. He let the moment settle like dust in a sunbeam. Then slowly, He reached across the short space between us, turning his palm upward in a gesture that asked rather than took. I looked at his hand, steady, patient, open, and after a pause, I placed mine in his. The warmth was immediate, a pulse of human connection that felt at once startling and natural. He didn't squeeze. He didn't pull me closer. He just held my hand as though he knew it might take me time to decide what that touch meant. The mantel clock chimed 9. We sat there, hand in hand, while the shadows stretched across the rug and the candle's scent faded into the air. I found myself telling him stories I hadn't planned to share, about the first time I cooked a holiday meal on my own and burned the rolls, about the way the house creaks at night in the hallway, about how sometimes I sit on the porch just to hear the neighborhood breathe. He listened the way few people do, without waiting to talk, without fixing, without judgment. Just listening. Every now and then he'd nod or smile, but mostly he let the words land where they needed to. And then he shared too, about the nights on the road when the motel felt colder than it should, about missing home even when he wasn't sure where home was anymore, about the way his crew teased him for always carrying a paperback in his back pocket. He admitted that sometimes he felt out of place with people his own age, like they were chasing something he didn't believe in. I guess I've always felt older than I am,